especially after the budget statement was read. And those two bills, the budget itself, the budget estimates, and the finance bill will be presented to Parliament tomorrow for debate and approval after the statement was read last week by CS Mbadi. So on the issue of debt, which is a bit one of a talking point, it's a going concern. Of course, 1.14 trillion shillings budget deficit, most of it to be plugged through domestic borrowing, meaning businesses are stifled when it comes to access to credit. What does that mean? That's a story on the Star today. On the Standard, pressure mounts, or Daily Nation, pressure mounts on MPs as Kenyans and businesses call for finance bill compromise. These are the taxation measures, part of the bills that will be presented in Parliament tomorrow. And so, matters finance bill, a big discussion. For this conversation this morning, we're privileged to have Professor Fred Ogolla, who's an economics and governance expert, also a presidential candidate. Karibu sana, Professor.
Thank you very much, Fred.
And next to him, we have FCPA Hesbon Omolo, a governance expert.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, let's start from the president's travels. This, from the moment he became president, I think the first year, a lot of the discussions we had, and Professor, you were here, was about the president traveling a bit too much. In your own assessment, have these travels been beneficial? The president, in his own defense, says, yes, as I go, this is where we get the money to do what we are doing right now.
Yeah, first of all, Fred, let me say that President William Ruto was already a traveling man even before becoming president. Mm-hmm. If you look at even the run-up to 2022 elections, he traveled more abroad than Raila. Look at when he went to New York, he went to Washington, he made a speech, he came to London. He did all those overseas trips. He met so many pastors in so many places abroad there. He traveled to some African countries. And that's the case. But you see, this has been a tradition. Even you remember the shuttle diplomacy that was done by Kalonzo Musyoka. Mm-hmm. So all these things are not new. What I would point out, which is very clear, is that a true measure of an overseas trip can be seen in the following things. How much does Kenya expand global trade? How are we growing in our exports abroad? Because those are some of the things, the bilateral agreements being done. Secondly, how much are we gaining foreign direct investments? Mm-hmm. And then thirdly, how have we improved our diplomatic relations with people who are not really working with us closely? And the answer is the following, that we haven't expanded our diplomatic outreach in spite of these travels. So that means that those travels are more personal mm-hmm. than actually their state. Secondly, foreign direct investment is going more to Ethiopia. They are going more to Tanzania. They are going more to Rwanda with no equivalent travels. Mm-hmm. Why is Ethiopia getting more foreign direct investment than Kenya, while the president of Ethiopia is not traveling as the president of Kenya? And lastly, our exports are not growing because we are having trade imbalance. We are importing more than we are exporting, and tea exports, coffee exports are shrinking. Even apparels are shrinking. And also we are exporting goods which have not been given value addition. So that is not the best way. But Fred, let's analyze this. When I become president, what do we need to start by doing? We start by improving the fiscal policy at home, domestic fiscal policy, financial policy, to attract investors. Dangote was here during the France-Africa Summit. Tony Olomide was here. But immediately, we increased our fuel prices, taxes went up. Kenya is less attractive to trade. Kenya is the worst in Africa. In terms of ease of doing business, we are only better than South Sudan, which is a state we created. We are only better than the last born of Africa. So before you go out, Fred, when you left your house today, I'm sure you must have dressed up and looked at yourself in the mirror and said, I'm ready for outside. Mm-hmm. So is Kenya ready to be taken outside? If you go sell a rotten banana, it does not matter how long you take. The chaos at home, Ebola shouts are here. When we hear, even when last time when the king was coming here, Kenyans are showing the media, don't come. Last time the vice president of the US, Vance, was supposed to come here, the Kenyans said, don't come here. So Kenyans in social media are already telling people that this is a mismanaged economy.
Right.
I'm looking for a point when we do our internal policies that people are actually telling people, young people should be tweeting by saying, come visit my country. It is the time when now these foreign visits will make sense.
Okay. But can we say that it's been all useless visits by the president? Definitely, there must be something positive that can come out of all those hundreds of visits since he became president.
I think to some extent, some of those trips have not resulted into tangible investment opportunities, but there are quite a number of tangible opportunities you can count. As recent as his visit to Brussels the other day, I think there have been agreements around how we can export more tea. And of course, we've also had, I think the most visited country the president has been to is Tanzania. And I think a lot of challenges around how we relate to that country has been addressed, including certain tensions around tariff for common commodities between our borders. So I think there's a lot you can talk about that are positive. Even in China, the kind of programs or investments that have been unlocked between the two countries. So I think it's not all gloom and doom. So it is not right to say that all those trips have not yielded anything.
But perhaps the biggest issue Kenyans have is now the spending by State House. That over time we see that the spending, the budgetary allocations are going up, and people are asking, what exactly is this president doing with this money? In comparison, even to his predecessor, that in 4 years he has spent 90+ billion shillings and counting, and yet in President Uhuru Kenyatta's 10 years, he spent the 90 billion shillings as well.
I think the two presidents, the current president and the former president, have different leadership styles. And as Ogola has rightly put it, even before his election as president, he had more international trips in terms of building networks as a deputy president. But even before then, remember at a national scale, the president came late into building political networks beyond our borders. Unlike his predecessor, Uhuru, who had been there and inherited a network from the systems that operated from way back when his father ruled the country. It was much easier for him.
Okay.
The Honorable Raila Odinga, the late the Lord rest his soul in peace, built his political network globally over a very long period of time. So I think for President Ruto, it's been more of a lot of catch-up to do that that kind of shuttle diplomacy, to just build networks and alliances across the globe. But I think that has extended into his presidency. Then besides that, the leadership style of President Kenyatta, President Ruto are totally different. Ruto is more of a hands-on leader. He would, yes, delegate, but he also check, are you doing what is required? So he does a lot of follow-up around his programs. And that's why you see, even domestically, he's done a lot of travels. He's gone to almost every corner of this country. There are places he's been to almost like Nyanza. I think President Ruto has been to Nyanza as many times as all the previous presidents have been to Nyanza. You combine Kenyatta 1, Kenyatta 2, Kibaki, and all that cannot match what is done in that region. So I think there is something about his style of leadership that may not necessarily be the same as his predecessors, but also there is also a realization that in terms of inspection of development projects across the country, we have to give it to the president that he's tried to do much more across the entire country. Of course, the argument could be, can you do it remotely? But of course, as a country, we also know that we have had a very fractured kind of relationship when you have the president and his deputy being at loggerheads at a very early stage of their political union as they run the country. You can be sure that if there's likely to be a loss of political support somewhere, then there could be some hidden nuances around how do I compensate for my lost or perceived loss of or support in certain areas. So sometimes you've got to be ready.
All right.
And I think probably there could be that element of politics also involved. And
he's been very keen to ensure that his footprint is seen and felt across the country. Probably, as Bonahesbon says, we probably just got ourselves an expensive president. But even the construction of the number of state lodges, in places like Wajir, Embu, and I understand even Meru, they're developing another one.
Homa Bay.
In Homa Bay. And some of them, you can actually tell they're like 150 kilometers apart. Do you agree that probably his style may work for him, but yes, we got ourselves a costlier president?
Fred, I think the fundamental thing to look about, first of all, to judge the foreign trip is, do Kenya have a foreign policy? Because with the foreign policy determines how they work. I work closely with the Vatican in some other ways. And the Pope does not just leave to go travel. There's a foreign policy. For example, the head of foreign policy in the Vatican is called Cardinal Parolini. The Pope can't just wake up and say, I'm traveling. Here, who is in charge of that travel policy? Because there must be a travel policy. We cannot just operate like it is your style. Kenya is governed by the sovereign will of the people. We can't have someone says, you just wake up and depends on your style, you do things according to your style. We have a state.
Even locally, he's allowed to
no,
move. Even
locally, there must be a policy. You know, policy is important, Fred. We can't just say it depends on you. Do you know, with the good policy, with the good systems and structures, not so good president cannot be too bad. But without that, a bad president can be terrible. Look at Trump, for example. There are some things Trump wants to do that American policy can't allow him. He can't bulldoze those systems. So we can't just say we have a president who is having a different style. Kibaki did great on a wheelchair. And the impact was seen everywhere.
He wasn't moving
in
much
every classroom felt him. But here we have speeches, governmentizing by giving speeches. I have done this, I have done that. And also these speeches are not true. There are so many misinformation, disinformation happening. Let's go to Tanzania, where he was making a speech in front of Samia Suluhu. And he claims to have invested there, and Samia says, I'm not aware. So there is no foreign policy. And I want to, without bashing at him, the Kenyan foreign policy, when I was Kibaki's economic advisor, we said depends on three things. One, peace with neighbors. Peace, coexisting with neighbors and other nations. So everything, this visit should be, how do we expand peace with neighbors? Two was about prosperity. How can these visits create prosperity in terms of foreign direct investment, in terms of trade, in terms of economic tangible benefits that Kenyans are getting? The last one is competitiveness. Can these visits make us much better? For example, Samia Suluhu decided to go to Russia. And then Russia, thinking that they are working with Russia, Russia throws very good money at them. You understand? Investing in the manufacturing of drugs, isn't it? Investing in the value addition in agriculture. And that investment actually is tangible. I was analyzing this in one of the media houses based in Russia. So for us here, what we are counting is trip after trip. Then after this trip, the goodies we are being told don't come. I remember the state visit which was given to the president when he went to the US, his first state visit to the US. The list of billions of shillings and trillions of shillings which were written down were very many. I'm sure you know those figures. But we are still having a deficit. Why are those things not filling the holes we have in the country? Fuel prices are going up. We are being told the dollar is hitting us. Why can this correct the problem which is in the economic? It's not travel. One, the high debt. Why is he not even spending time negotiating European Union, European Central Bank, IMF about them, isn't it? Two, we are having unemployment. He claims to be creating employment abroad. while creating none at home. You get me? Why not go abroad, attract companies abroad, come set up in Kenya, then create these jobs for young people right here?
All right.
The other problem we're having is inflation. How is he betting money to invest in value addition, in primary production, secondary production? For me, those should be priorities.
Right.
So let me tell you why State House expenditure will go up when I finish. State House Nairobi is 740 acres. It has been turned to be the largest restaurant in the world. If you go to State House, you'll find all these people, everyone is eating and drinking and merrymaking. Now, he's expanding more. How can one person have over 50 beds available to him at any given time? Right. While Kenyans, some of them are actually sleeping on a mat.
Okay.
So when you're talking about leading a country this poor, how can one person have access to over 50 beds you can sleep at will? While your people you're leading are sleeping on a mat. For me, that's where the economy is.
Thank you, Professor, for that. Let's take a short break. We'll continue discussing the budget and the issues arising from the budget. The two bills will be presented before the National Assembly tomorrow morning, but the statement was read out last week, and that is what we're discussing with these experts in studio. See you after.